Welcome to the Daily Brain, where we will address the definition and history of the word egregious.
Uh-huh.
Get ready. Because in this deep dive, we're uncovering not just what egregious means today, and you probably think you know,
Right.
but also its surprising, almost unbelievable past.
It's quite a story.
Yeah, we've sifted through dictionaries, usage over centuries, really,
Yeah.
to bring you the most fascinating bits about this, well, powerful word.
It really is powerful. You know, it's one of those words that carries a real punch in modern English.
Definitely.
If you hear something described as egregious, you immediately get it. It's seriously bad.
No question.
But that wasn't always the case, which is what makes this whole exploration so interesting.
Oh, absolutely. So, okay, let's start with how we understand egregious right now, like today.
Okay.
Looking at resources like Merriam-Webster, there's also that My Word Book video.
Mm-hmm.
The message is pretty consistent. It describes something that stands out, but, in a conspicuously bad way. Shocking, even.
Right. The standing out part is key, but it's the badness that stands out.
Exactly. Merriam-Webster itself gives the example, egregious errors.
Classic example.
In My Word Book, they talked about an egregious breach of protocol.
Yeah, and didn't they mention a judge?
They did. A judge describing something as the most egregious act he had ever seen. You really get that sense of severity.
And that element of being easily noticed for its badness, that's crucial.
Right.
Even the Merriam-Webster definition for kids, it highlights that.
Yeah.
Very bad and easily noticed.
Simple but effective.
And then you get into the legal definitions, like from Merriam-Webster legal. It's extremely and conspicuously bad.
Okay, so extremely and conspicuously.
Yeah. And Cornell's Legal Information Institute, they take it even further. Flagrant or outrageous in comparison to a normal standard of conduct.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely not minor slip-ups we're talking about.
Not at all.
And the synonyms Merriam-Webster lists.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
They really underscore this negativity, don't they?
They really do. What do they got?
Blatant, conspicuous, flagrant, glaring, gross, obvious, patent, pronounced, rank, striking. The list just goes on.
Yeah, each one just amplifies that feeling of something being strikingly, undeniably bad.
It's like they couldn't find enough ways to say really, really bad and obvious.
Pretty much. It's a testament to how strong that current negative meaning is, but...
Well.
Okay, hold on to your hats now.
Uh-oh.
Because this is where the story takes a really unexpected turn.
Okay.
Imagine using egregious as a compliment.
Wait, what? Seriously?
It's a compliment?
Seriously? It's enough to make you do a double take, right?
Yeah.
A user on the Straight Dope message board had that exact reaction. A real WTF moment, they said.
I can imagine.
When they found out the archaic definition was outstandingly good, shocking. But, like, shocking in a good way.
Outstandingly good. That's bizarre.
Isn't it? And Merriam-Webster's Did You Know section confirms it. They explain it comes from Latin and originally meant distinguished or eminent. It was actually a term of praise.
Distinguished, eminent, wow. And there was this Reddit discussion, too. People just genuinely amazed by this complete reversal in meaning.
A 180-degree flip.
Exactly. It really shows how much a word's meaning can evolve, sometimes dramatically.
Okay, so it used to be good. How long ago are we talking?
Well, someone on Straight Dope, Princhester, they looked it up in the Oxford English Dictionary, found that the good meaning was already considered archaic way back in 1738.
1738, so it's been negative for a long time.
A very long time. Yeah, for centuries now, egregious has been firmly in the bad camp.
Still, it makes you think about the lifespan of words.
Yeah.
How connotations shift. So let's get into the roots then. Where did it come from?
Right, the etymology. So Merriam-Webster says it's from the Latin egregious.
Egregious.
Which literally breaks down to standing out from the flock.
Standing out from the flock.
The E part means out of, and Greg or Grex, that refers to a herd or flock. The Reddit folks pointed that out too.
E for out, Grex for flock.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, let's think about that image. Standing out from the flock.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could be good or bad, right?
Exactly. It's kind of neutral on its own.
You could stand out because you're the prize sheep, or
you could stand out because you're, I don't know, the black sheep causing trouble.
Right, so the core idea is just being distinct, separate from the group.
Precisely. And it's interesting, Merriam-Webster connects it to other words from that same Latin root, grex.
Like what?
Words like gregarious, sociable, liking the flock, aggregate, bringing things into a group, congregate, gathering together, and segregate, setting apart from the group.
Okay, so they all relate to groups, being in or out.
Exactly. So the fundamental idea is about being distinct or separate.
So the big question then is, how did this neutral-ish idea of just standing out turn so completely into meaning outstandingly bad? What happened?
That's the million-dollar linguistic question, isn't it? How does that flip happen?
Yeah.
Well, Merriam-Webster offers a pretty compelling theory, ironic use.
Irony. How so?
Imagine someone way back when sarcastically calling a really terrible mistake egregious, using the original outstanding meaning.
Like, oh, that was an outstanding blunder you made there. Wink, wink.
Exactly, with a massive eye roll probably. Over time, that sarcastic usage, where you mean the opposite,
Yeah.
it could have just caught on. The negative feeling associated with it got stronger and stronger until eventually it just became the main meaning.
That actually makes a lot of sense. You can see how that might happen. Sarcasm slowly chipping away at the original meaning.
Right. The Reddit discussion touched on that too, the negative use gradually taking over, possibly starting, ironically, like you said, a slow linguistic burn.
Okay, so irony is one possibility. Are there other ideas?
Well, yeah, Dr. Strangelove on the Straight Dope board had a slightly different take, a bit more nuanced.
Yeah.
They suggested maybe the word always carried a sense of just remarkable or standing out, but maybe it often had a negative flavor that just became dominant over time, especially because it was so often paired with negative words. Think egregious error, egregious crime.
So the company, it could sort of dragged it down.
Kind of. So maybe less a complete 180 flip and more like a shift in emphasis where the negative side of being remarkable just took over.
That's interesting, too. Like, the potential for negativity was always lurking and standing out.
Could be. And then you had another user, DPRK, on Straight Dope, who basically said the literal sense, standing out, is neutral. Context would always have decided if it was good or bad.
Which kind of brings us back to how language works generally. Context is king.
It really is.
Yeah.
Which leads nicely into the English language and usage stack exchange discussion.
What was the consensus there?
Pretty much unanimous. The current meaning is negative, full stop. The positive sense, definitely archaic.
No debate now.
No debate now.
Yep.
And one user, Fumblefingers, even mentioned remembering seeing the positive meaning in older books they read.
Wow. So for some people, that shift is within memory almost.
Yeah, it highlights how real and relatively recent, in linguistic terms, this change has been for some.
It's almost hard to wrap your head around someone genuinely praising something as egregious not that long ago.
It really is.
Okay, so let's pivot to modern usage then. How we use it today, quirks and all. There was that question on the English Language Learners Stack Exchange.
Yeah, about egregious blunder.
Right. Since blunder itself often means a pretty bad mistake, is saying egregious blunder redundant? Is it overkill?
It's a fair question. I mean, some dictionaries do define blunder as a significant error.
Yeah.
But others, like Merriam-Webster and Oxford, define it more generally, like a stupid or careless mistake. Not necessarily huge.
Okay, so it depends on your definition of blunder.
Kind of. So using egregious blunder isn't necessarily redundant. As one user, J.A. Little, pointed out, egregious there just amps up the badness.
Right, it emphasizes that it was an outstandingly bad mistake.
Exactly. Whether the blunder itself was inherently massive or just careless, calling it egregious, highlights how conspicuously bad it was.
JR, in that same discussion, had a good analogy, didn't they?
Yeah, the major catastrophe one.
Right. A catastrophe is already bad, obviously.
Terrible event by definition.
But saying major catastrophe just emphasizes the scale, the severity, even more.
Precisely. And egregious works like that with blunder. It adds that extra layer that, wow, that was really bad and obvious feeling.
Got it. Okay. Now, what about that other theory from Straight Dope? Little Nemo, was it?
Yeah. That was an interesting, maybe slightly controversial idea.
About misuse.
Yeah, suggesting that sometimes when people misuse impressive-sounding words often enough, that incorrect usage can eventually just become accepted. The meaning shifts because of errors.
I can see how that might happen with some words, maybe.
But Princhester, back on Straight Dope, had a strong counterpoint.
What was that?
They argued that misuse usually leads to a different meaning, or maybe a watered-down meaning, but not necessarily to the word having, like, no real meaning.
Okay, so misuse changes things, but doesn't erase meaning entirely.
Right. Language is always being shaped by how we use it, right? Even if those uses aren't strictly correct by old standards. We've seen that clearly with egregious.
Definitely.
And speaking of current use, Merriam-Webster's examples of egregious in sentences today, they really nail it down.
All negative, I assume.
Completely. They list things like egregious mistakes, corporate executives committing egregious breaches of trust.
Okay. Common uses.
An egregious example of political bias, even egregious conduct in sports that might get you a bigger penalty.
Right. Across the board. Bad news.
Unmistakably negative in every single case they show.
So it's pretty definitive then. If you call something egregious today, you are not paying a compliment.
Not unless, like we said, you're aiming for some very specific, probably confusing, sarcastic effect. And you'd better hope your audience gets it.
Yeah, probably best to just avoid that.
Okay.
So let's wrap this up.
Sure.
Our deep dive into egregious, it really shows this incredible linguistic journey.
It really does.
Started out meaning outstandingly good, rooted in that simple idea of standing out from the flock, positively.
Distinguished, eminent.
And then over time, through this mix of things, probably irony playing a big part.
Yes, seems like the...
Maybe getting paired with negative words a lot. And just the fact that standing out can be negative.
Right.
The meaning completely flipped. Just, wow, to describe something outstandingly bad.
It's a really powerful reminder, isn't it, about how dynamic language is, how unpredictable it can be.
Totally unpredictable.
Absolutely. And, it leaves you wondering.
Yeah.
Well, considering this huge evolution for egregious, what other words out there might be undergoing big shifts right now? Are there words you've noticed changing?
That's a great question for our listeners to think about.
Yeah, what subtle forces, maybe irony, maybe association, maybe something else entirely might be driving those changes today?
It encourages you to be a bit of a linguistic detective in your own life, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. Pay attention to how words are being used around you, maybe dig into their origins sometimes.
See what other hidden histories you can uncover.
Exactly. You might just find that language is packed with these fascinating stories, these transformations just waiting to be explored.